Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod with Chris Allaire. He's founder and CEO at Averity, best staffing company to work in North America. We're going to talk about staffing, tech, foundership, everything in between. This pod is brought to you by podpar.com. That's my podcasting company. If you want to monetize your podcast the unconventional way and keep on scaling with the Ikigai four circles that is podcasting, you can hit me up. Charles Cormier on Google, on LinkedIn, or podpar.com. Chris, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and about what you're up to nowadays.
Thanks for having me. So I own and run a technology staffing and recruiting firm. I've been in the technology staffing and recruiting business for 25 years. Decided to start and go out on my own almost 10 years ago, and have built a kind of an empire since then. So we were based in New York City, but due to the 2020 pandemic and things like that, we've gone remote. So we no longer have an office. I have moved to South Carolina. Went from a 2-bedroom doorman building in the Bronx to now I have 5 acres of land and a barn. So I've definitely been enjoying the remote lifestyle, that's for sure.
So how big is the empire?
So a little smaller now than it was when we first started the year. Finished last year, started this year about 35 people, but unfortunately due to 2023, kind of the economy and some of the technical recessions we've had to do some restructuring. So the company now has got 8 full-time people and about half a dozen people on 1099 contract basis.
Cool. How many employees? What's the revenue this year? And what's your plan to kind of course correct, if there is a course correction to be have had in your field?
So as far as the number of employees we have, basically the biggest thing this year we've seen is just a massive shift in the way people are managing their budgets. Especially clients are managing their budgets, and how that turned into be hiring. For the last 2 years, we've seen a massive run in hiring, and specifically in tech, and including some crazy salary inflations. And I think, like anybody, we definitely were at the right place at the right time, and we're able to take advantage of those types of markets and really help a lot of clients, deliver a lot of people. But the last year, a lot of people have decided that, they're going to stay put where they are. Companies are a lot more strategic with where they are, with the rise of interest rates and the fact that money's just not cheap anymore. So that's the big things we saw this year. I think next year, what we're going to see is a lot more people kind of back on the market, a lot more people looking around again, a lot more companies understanding that they need to grow internally, that they can't just outsource to consulting firms. But I think some people are really going to see a lot more strategic ways on how they hire, the way they make offers, who they decide to bring onto their team, and the biggest thing is going to be where people are going to be located. There's a lot more on-site and hybrid now, depending on where you are, as opposed to the 100% fully remote. And if it's going to be 100% fully remote, I see a lot of organizations now moving to much more of an offshore and nearshore model, as opposed to, housing people in the United States who are placed in a different state. But we'll see what happens.
Will AI replace a bunch of humans in the next couple of years?
Not even close. AI is still going to need it's still going to need prompts, right? AI is never going to replace people. It's going to become an asset for us to do things quicker and easier. But as far as replacement, I don't see it happening. The things that it has tried to replace, all we have to do now is go in and fix it all, because all it does is screw it up. So I'd like to see it. I'd like to see people less talking about the replacement of humans with AI, and more talking about the capabilities on what humans can do with it in order to make their lives a little smarter and a little easier. Not think that it's going to do the job for them.
I replaced my full team with AIs this year. All AIs are doing better. They cost less, and they perform probably 2 to 5x better. I'm an early adopter. I've been working remote from day one. Started my businesses 7 years ago, and typically everyone catches up to what I'm doing 3 to 4 years later. So I predict there will be a huge shift in the market, and it's intimidating to think that 30% of jobs will be somewhat slashed, and these folks won't be able to re-enter the market. I do think that these folks might convert themselves to entrepreneurs, though. or just be under the government's responsibility for quite some time? What do you think about that?
I don't really know, to be honest with you. I think AI, the definition of AI, it's been around for like 30 to 40 years. So I think that, it got a lot of hype this year just because of ChatGPT and some of the other things about that. But, at the end of the day, it's still, people are still programming it. People are still running things, robots aren't running the world. So people are the people who are building everything that happens out there. And, as much as, your calendar can be replaced with an AI tool, I think that's great. As my calendar has been replaced with an AI tool, or I can talk to Siri and add stuff to it. Hopefully she doesn't respond to me. But as far as like ideation and evolution, the human cultures are meant to be connected and speak to people. I don't see that changing anytime soon. I don't see us getting to a point where people are just gonna be living in bubbles and interacting on constant Zoom calls. Not when people still need love and connection in order to survive as the human race.
Right. Well, that's how communities were built. So that will fundamentally shift the fabric of society. And it's going to be interesting because even without AI, we're seeing already the society breaking apart, men not leading, people not seeking connections, just going through technology and so forth, people not thinking critically anymore, and just group thinking. So it's interesting times for sure. I want to ask, you said that, yeah, this year was sort of challenging in your field. So how have you faced these challenges head on as the CEO? What kind of solutions have you adopted to make the business healthier?
I think it's any times like this. This is my third recession, and I've been doing this for 25 years. So I've done this through now 3 recessions and a pandemic. And the way that you get through these things, and first and foremost, is you identify, that it's identification on the type of space that you're in, and understanding what you're great at, understanding what you're not great at, and what you do is you attack the things that you're good at. And at the end of the day, the things that get you out of these types of things are your connections with your relationships with the people that you do business with. And all I've done is, during any recession, during any downside or economy, is strengthen those relationships. It's what I call fortify, because we're all going to come out of it. This happens every 10 to 12 years, and you can set your watch to it. It's gone on for hundreds of years. We went through this, it's all bound by different, parameters on what's been going on if you just study history. So it's going to repeat itself again in 10 to 12 years, and we're going to go through it again in 10 to 12 years. What's going to cause it, God only knows. But in the same token, we've gone out of it. So I know that when we get out of it, the one thing that's going to be the staple for us is going to be our relationships. It's going to be who we know, that we are always there for them, that they trust us, they know us, they like us, and that we're the types of people that are here for you when the going gets tough. It's just, you can't just celebrate the good times. You have to stick together during the tough times. And I think that's what makes people, in my opinion, I think that's what makes people great at what they do. It's not how you're managed or how you were during the great times. It's how were you really during the tough times. And those are the types of people, the companies and the people that I'm in business with, and the people that work for me, all we did was fortify our relationships together, because we were in this together. And we were in it together during the pandemic. We were in it together this year. And we are continuing just to reach out and talk to the people that we know that are what I would call the Verity friends. And they love hearing from us. And they want to talk to us, and when they're ready to go in 2024, when things start to really turn around, we will be there for them.
You think that things will turn around? I'm looking at the salaries on your website, $350K for an engineer. I'm not sure how the hell a company could have any ROI on that, maybe like in 10 years, but it seems to me that these salaries are inflated because big tech and the VC world out there, they're just constantly pushing money into companies, and they might hope that these companies will have a liquidity event eventually. But now it's full of dry powder. I think a bunch of companies will have evaluation corrections. They're not unicorns, and that will kill a good part of the market. I also think that these engineers that want to work physically, some of them want to work in huge population density areas like New York, which drastically increased their salaries, right? So yesterday I was watching a podcast. To have a home in New York, you need to pay an extra 30K here. Then to have a car, an extra 1K per month there. It's completely ridiculous. And I also feel that people will move away from cities. So do you really think that the market will be better next year? Because to me, it doesn't look super positive for 2024, but there might be a correction 2025, 2026, in which the market will start going back up again, at least in tech, that is.
I think the market's going to be tremendously better next year. I think what's going to happen is it's not, maybe not salary wise. Salaries don't determine the market. The businesses determine the market. People determine the market. And there's a lot of people that we know that took jobs for, they know that they're overpaid, but they also know they hate their job, and they are willing to take a pay cut to go back to a way of life and go back to an organization that they believe in and where they really want to work and they want to enjoy what they do. And I've talked to a lot of people that were making $350,000, $500,000 a year. They're saying, I don't need to make that much money. I'd rather have a job that I'm a lot happier in, that I can really push myself and be aggressive towards the technology I'm using. And if that means I have to take a 25% pay cut, then so be it. And so the other thing is, like, and depending what business these people are in, the product is what drives the revenue for an organization, right? Even Zoom has a paid service, even though a lot of people use the free one. So everything out there is, the beautiful part about technology, the way it's evolved over the years, is what we've seen is the marriage between product and technology, right? Because you have these internal organizations, and an engineer is building stuff internally for an organization, but it all depends on who's using it, what the product is, and who's and again, still going back to who's using it. A lot of these products that people are building are used internal. It could be used by financial traders, could be used by healthcare, it could be used by nurse practitioners, right? What the products that they're using are critical. These are machines that save lives, right? So you're looking at stuff like that. And it could be as simple as an app. So maybe a company that's building an app on your phone isn't going to pay $350,000 an engineer, but maybe the company that's building an oncology research platform to cure cancer, they look at that and they say, like, $350,000 for what we're building is a no-brainer for us, and we'll gladly pay those types of salaries for the right people. So I look at when the way the market spins back, I look at what companies are still thriving, what companies have a good product model, what companies have a revenue generating stream, what companies are not reliant on venture capital or borrowed funds from banks and resources. And honestly, most of our client base are Fortune 100 or Fortune 500 companies. So these guys have been around for 140, 150 years. They've been through this. They've weathered this storm. So for them, it's just they've had cash reserves, so they're okay. I'm not talking about startups that are Series A companies that are looking to borrow $25 million so they can build the next state of the art or something. I'm talking about the largest the largest of their brand in their industry. And those are the companies that are have stood the test of time, and they will be here. They were here this year. They were here last year. They will be here next year. They're not really going anywhere.
Yeah. HI, human intelligence, vs AGI, and that creation of magic, as CEOs, as founders, some of us can get in that zone. As employees, it's a bit more rare because they've got various forces coming up against them, in my opinion. But let's say Steve Jobs, right? The Steve Jobs magic, the Elon Musk magic, the Einstein magic. How does one recreate that in a business context?
Belief. I think what you got to do is you got to take a look at where you are, where you need to be, and understand the difference between where you are and where you need to be and why you need to be there. And then lead with a system, a belief system where people say, if I don't follow this person, I'm out of my mind. And I think that's the biggest thing. You look at Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, the examples you used, they're, maybe not Steve Jobs, but, look at Elon. He's kind of crazy in his own right, but look at what he's done. And it's pretty amazing what he's done. And we only get to see a small shadow of what that is. And I can imagine being in a room with that guy, the amount of ideas. And when you hear someone like that talk and you hear their belief system on what's going to happen, that's going to change the world, I can imagine that's going to be tough to not buy into. And that's, I think, the innovative leaders, I don't mean like innovative, like new technologies, but I mean like changing the landscape, seeing the way something's done. And are you willing to change it? Are you willing to make it better? Can you make it better versus, oh, I just have a new idea. It's like, well, new ideas are awesome. Don't get me wrong, but what is it going to make anything better? And I think what happens is when you have leaders that are willing to stick their neck out and say, I know that this is going to happen. Trust me, follow me. People will follow.
I feel that Elon, we still don't really know who he is, or at least me, a founder, CEO, an ambitious person, because he's just being interviewed by normal journalists, and he has lots of PR surrounding the man, just like sitting with him in a room and just asking him the questions you want to ask, and getting his real unfiltered responses would give a lot of answers. But on the other side, it's his own playbook, that has worked with him, his genetics, his environment, and so forth. So most of it can't be applied at glove in hands as we would like to think. So who are you following nowadays, and what habits are you trying to nail down in your life for more productivity and more happiness?
That's a really good question. So I don't follow one person per se. I'm an avid reader, so I enjoy reading lots of different things and taking from different trees, if you will. I think if I was, I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan. I love what he stands for. I love the way he does things. I love the way he gives you an internal power to make, understanding that you make choices, and every choice that you make every day is the outcome that you're going to get from it. And understanding the fact that, it's up to you to go ahead and make a choice and do something about it. So I'm a huge fan of his. I've been following him for a while. Anything to do with, I'm trying to think of some names on the top of my head right now, but anything to do with, I can't think of his name, the founder of Virgin.
Richard Branson.
Richard Branson, anything he says, I will listen to. And if I could say there's one thing I want to be in my life, is him. I think he's got it nailed. The man I've never seen a picture of him not smiling. And I think that's something to kind of be jealous of a little bit. The guy is in his late 60s. He still kite surfs. He owns an island. He's brilliant. And he wrote a book that I kind of call my Bible. And a lot of it's, and I use one of his quotes. He says, if it's not fun, it's not worth doing. And he's great because the way he built things, he's like, I know what I'm great at and I'm awesome at it, but I also know what I don't do well. And I'm going to surround myself with people who are smarter than me, who can do those things. And I got to say, it's like, I've taken that page on every bit of it. And I love it because I think it's one of those things like, I've always said this to people, and I believe it, that like, when I look around the room and if I'm the smartest person in the room, I get the hell out of the room. I need to run for it. Because I've been there before. I looked around the room and I was like, I'm the smartest person in this room. Oh my God, eject. So, and I was like, you find a different room to be in. So surround yourself with people that you can look up to. He's one of those people. I think, again, Tony Robbins is one of those people. I love listening to Simon Sinek talk. I think he's brilliant. So those are some of them. I think the rest of it is just, I love to get ideas from different people who are, how would I say, is like, who are full tilt CEOs. And what I mean by that are understand, not only the business, but the mind, body, and soul, understanding how to really interact and how to balance all of it together to be a full human being, a full person. Because I love to follow guys like Michael Bloomberg, and I love to follow people like that. But I also know that they got to a certain age and you ask them, what's the biggest regret they ever had in their life? And a lot of it was like, I spent my entire time in my business. I never spent any time with my family and my loved ones. And now their kids are all grown up and they hardly know them. And I don't want to be that person. So.
Yeah, I have dickheads as kids, that, just take your car, crash it, and get drunk and just do harm to society or flaunt your money. Hey, my dad, he's stronger than yours. So yeah. Branson, took a lot of risks, and while listening to, I was like, does this guy always smile because he's been through hell? Do you think, because one premise for me next year is to take way more risks, and I've been through the gates of hell and in the pain cave business wise, that is many times. But I think I'm ready to go back in there. Then another question is, do I need to suffer to have growth? I think I do, so what do you think about that thesis of taking huge risk, facing hundreds of millions in bankruptcy, moving forward and getting $1 billion on the upside?
I think as long as you're intelligent with it, I think every risk is worthwhile. I mean, that's how we got there, right? I mean, think about everything we've ever done as a risk. If you're someone who knows, who understands how to lay it out on the line and manages it appropriately, it's managed risk, right? It's leverage risk. It's intelligent risk. It's not, it's not stupid risk. Saying like, oh, if I jump out of this airplane without a parachute, I'll live. It's like, that's a risky move. You probably won't. So, don't take that risk. However, right, there's the audibles to that. There's different things that you can do. Maybe I want to have a parachute, but I'll have, one of those glider suits on or things like that, right? So I think any type of risk, if depending on who's doing it, as long as it's leveraged, as long as it's intelligent, as long as it's measured, as long as it's planned out, you're going to be in pretty good shape. If you risk it all and you lose, welcome to life. That's what it is. I mean, I think anybody who's never put themselves out there isn't truly living. And that's probably a bold statement, because there's probably a lot of people that are like, oh, no, but if you've risk is part of life. Like, that's what happens. If you want to meet somebody, that's a risk, right? You risking walking up to somebody, shaking your hand out and saying, hi, how are you? My name is Chris. That person could be like, I don't give a shit who you are. Go with yourself, right? You have no idea what's going to happen until you do it. So I'm one of those types of people. It's like, you know what? Shoot, try, you score, it works. Look at you. But if it didn't, well, go back and tweak it. And you tweak it till it works. That's why I think failure is awesome. Failure is a great opportunity for success. Because if you did it one time and it worked, then most of the time you have no idea really what you did, but you didn't. I really question was like, well, how much? Well, did you really risk anything? No, it could be all measured out and you did it correctly. So yeah, you probably did a pretty good job at it. But if you ever talk at any the really high level, very, very successful CEOs, they the amount of failure that they've gone through, trials and tribulations in their career and in their life are incredible. And those are some, but the thing is, no one wants to hear those stories, right? All they want to hear about is how you started a company, you sold it for $4 billion, and you're this unicorn. But everyone ever wants to talk about the 8 organizations that I started before that, the amount of times I tried and tripped and fell and stumbled and failed miserably, and then looked at the books and you're like, oh my God, I have so much debt, I don't know what to do with it. No one talks about those types of things. Those things don't sell books. They don't get you on CNN. The success story and the dollar figures, that's what the media, that's what buys. That's what people want to hear. So that's all everybody hears. But I think anybody who's ever gone through it, who's totally risked themselves out there, do it. It's worth it. You might regret it, but fuck it, because it's worth it.
Yeah, not doing anything feels so lame at this level. Back in the days when I was a serotonin addicted teenager, it felt normal, but just sitting back and not taking action feels horrible, and getting the fuck off doesn't feel good, but I think I'm immune to it, and that's called adaptation, right? Because it wasn't always that way. Same for online hate that I get. I don't get much of it nowadays, which probably means there's a shitload coming soon. But yeah, taking risks and adapting, yeah, seems to be the way. And the stuff you mentioned, if you're smart, that's the condition, don't take a lot of risks if you're dumb, or if you don't have nothing to lose. And I think I did that in my younger days with my first venture, but nowadays that I have this high gut level intelligence, which is the definition of HI, human intelligence, I think I can take big risks and feel my way through them. Is that a good risk? Is that not? And if I get the downside that day and not the upside, well, sure, I'm gonna bet more at more tables and see if I can get the upsides at one of them. Once you get once you bet at a good table and you do get the upside and you get that money and that wealth, how do you spend it wisely so that you can get a nice return for yourself and your family on a happiness level?
I'm one of those. I invest in myself first. I always take a look at it and say, like, listen, you've got to have a. If you're not thinking smart about a rainy day, whatever that might be for you, then you're not thinking smart. It's the people who are taking it and they're constantly, I'm not going to say like reinvesting it, but they rather than understanding like kind of a good time to like, all right, let's take some of these chips and put them in my pocket versus like, let's keep them on the table and keep it rolling and keep it rolling. Anything, hindsight's 2020 or anybody, right? If you're like, oh, if I bet more money, I would have won more money. Yeah, but if you bet more money, you could have lost more money. So personally, I'm one of those types of people who's like, I know what I need in my life in order to be happy. I know what I need in my life to survive. I know what I need in my life to put food on the tables for my kids, for my wife, for my house, to take care of my pet. All I know what I need to do. Everything after that is a luxury. Everything after that's like, that's just a luxury. And I know it's weird to say, but like when you have bad years, you're happy. You had like, no, that's why you had those 5 good years, those 6 good years. Is you save for a rainy day, but then you have a bad year, and it's like, well, it's raining outside. It's like, well, good. That's why we were smart the last 4 years, is to do these things, right? It's like, one of those things about it, whether it's money or wealth or riches or whatever you want to call it, if that's what we're talking about here, I'm going to remind everybody, you will die one day. I will die one day. It is the one thing that is certain to come with you. And I'm going to guarantee you this, you can't take it with you. You can't take it with you, right? You could have a Ferrari sitting in the driveway, but if you get hit by a bus, guess what happens to the Ferrari? It still sits there in the driveway, all right? So, I'm one of those types of people. It's like, I know what I need, and I live a life of fulfillment, of understanding that like I'm not willing to kill myself in order to go so far above my means that I have forgotten what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. I'm one of those, like, I stay focused on the purpose of really what I'm going for. So I think that's my belief system. That's not everybody's out there, but that's what I like to do.
Love it, Chris. Where can people find out more about you?
I'm a LinkedIn guy. I think you can find me on it's LinkedIn. Its name is Chris, Chris, Allaire, Allaire. The company is Averity, Averity. Pretty active up on LinkedIn. I've got newsletters as well that go out there. I've been on a number of podcasts, so I think I'm pretty findable on the internet these days. All good things. So hopefully, but that's yeah. So if you reach out to me on LinkedIn, that's I'm pretty good shot to connect with me.
It was Chris Allaire, and Charles Cormier for another CEO Wisdom Podcast.com.